5 and welcome back to your first Destination Reader session of the week. We're on lesson 6 now. Remember, there will be keywords in red which are really important to help you with your learning. In blue, there will be questions for you to answer, and anything in green will indicate time for you to write. Before we begin, please check you have a copy of the story, a strategy prompt sheet, a pencil, and a piece of paper or your home learning book. Press pause now, gather all of your things, and then press play once you're ready to continue. Well done, let's begin. We're going to continue with strategy number 3 today, inference. What does inference mean? And why do good readers make inferences? I would like you to have a think about these 2 questions. You can say your answer out loud. Perhaps you could have a discussion with somebody at home. And then you can make a note of your ideas on your piece of paper or in your home learning book. Press pause now to discuss and write down your ideas, and then press play once you are ready to continue. Great. Inference means to read between the lines. If you are making inferences, you are looking for clues in the text to help you understand more. Authors sometimes leave key information out so that the reader wants to keep reading to find out more. We're going to recap what has happened in our story so far. Press pause now to have a discussion at home and maybe write down your ideas, and then press play once you're ready to continue. Well done. So far, we have met the Wormwoods, and we know that they don't really care much about Matilda. They don't have much in common with her, and they don't really share the same interests. We know that Matilda goes to the library once a week, and she borrows books from Mrs. Phelps, and she brings them home to read them in her bedroom. And we know that she's also tricked her family with her friend's parrot. So she made her family think that there was a burglar in the house when actually there was just a parrot. Well done if you got down any of those ideas. We're on to our vocabulary now. Obliged. Obliged. Which means to make someone legally or morally bound to do something, so they have to do it. Asinine. Asinine. Which means extremely stupid or foolish, and we'll see why that is used in today's chapter. And then we have civil. Civil, which means to be courteous and polite. This week, I will be asking questions for you to answer. Look carefully at how many marks each question is worth. Let's recap how to answer 1 and 2 mark questions, and you should remember this from your lessons in class. 1 mark questions need a short, snappy answer. For example, what is the name of the librarian in our story Matilda? You can say your answer out loud if you know it. Mrs. Phelps, that's the name of the librarian in our story Matilda. And as you can see, my answer is short and snappy. It doesn't explain, it just simply tells me the name of the librarian. 2 mark questions need a PE answer, point and evidence. Your point is the main idea that you want to talk about, and your evidence is where you prove your point using facts, figures, and examples. In our case, we'll be using quite a lot of examples. My question: how does the reader know that Matilda is treated unfairly by the Wormwoods? You can say your answer out loud if you know it now. My answer: I think we know Matilda is treated unfairly by the Wormwoods because their actions towards her are harsh. Mr. Wormwood says things to Matilda like, "I'm fed up with your reading, go and find yourself something useful to do." He then rips the pages out of her book instead of encouraging her to continue reading. I have used my sentence stem, I think. I have also used because, so I'm explaining why I think that. And I've used evidence from the text. I've used a quote of what Mr. Wormwood says. Right, let's begin reading. We're on page 43 and our chapter is called Arithmetic. Remember, I will read and you will follow along, and we will stop at points to ask questions. These will all be based around inference. Matilda longed for her parents to be good and loving and understanding and honourable and intelligent. The fact that they were none of these things was something she had to put up with. It was not easy to do so, but the new game she had invented of punishing one or both of them each time they were beastly to her made her life more or less bearable. Being very small and very young, the only power Matilda had over anyone in her family was brain power. For sheer cleverness, she could run rings around them all. But the fact remained that any 5-year-old girl in any family was always obliged to do was always obliged to do as she was told, however asinine the orders might be. So remember that obliged means that she has to do it. And we know that asinine means stupid or foolish. So even if the orders were very silly, Matilda was still required to do them. Thus, she was always forced to eat her evening meals out of TV dinner trays in front of the dreaded box. She always had to stay alone on weekday afternoons, and whenever she was told to shut up, she had to shut up. Her safety valve, the thing that prevented her from going round the bend, was the fun of devising and dishing out these splendid punishments, and the lovely thing was that they seemed to work, at any rate for short periods. The father in particular became less cocky and unbearable for several days after receiving a dose of Matilda's magic medicine. The parrot in the chimney affair quite definitely cooled both parents down a lot, and for over a week they were comparatively civil to their small daughter. But alas, this couldn't last. We're going to stop here. I have a question for you guys. How does Matilda wish to be treated by her parents? Remember, the question will not always be just where you finished reading. I would like you to say your answer out loud and then make a note of your ideas on your piece of paper or in your home learning book. Press pause now to discuss and write down your answers, and then press play once you're ready to continue. Well done. Your answer should read something along these lines. Matilda wishes to be treated with love and respect by her parents. We know at the beginning of the chapter, it says that she longed for her parents to be good and loving and understanding and honourable and intelligent. So any of these kind of words would be accepted for 1 mark. Let's continue. The next flare-up came one evening in the sitting room. Mr. Wormwood had just returned from work. Matilda and her brother were sitting quietly on the sofa, waiting for their mother to bring in the TV dinners on a tray. The television had not yet been switched on. In came Mr. Wormwood in a loud check suit and a yellow tie. The appalling broad orange and green check of the jacket and trousers almost blinded the onlooker. He looked like a low-grade bookmaker dressed up for his daughter's wedding, and he was clearly very pleased with himself this evening. He sat down in an armchair and rubbed his hands together and addressed his son in a loud voice. "Well, my boy," he said, Your father's had a most successful day. He is a lot richer tonight than he was this morning. He has sold no less than 5 cars, each one at a tidy profit. Sawdust in the gearboxes, the electric drill on the speedometer, cables, a splash of paint here and there, and a few other clever little tricks, and the idiots were all falling over themselves to buy. He fished a bit of paper from his pocket and studied it. Listen, boy, he said, addressing the son and ignoring Matilda. Seeing as you'll be going into this business with me one day, you've got to know how to add up the profits you make at the end of each day. Go and get yourself a pad and a pencil and let's see how clever you are. The son obediently left the room and returned with the writing materials. Write down these figures, the father said, reading from his bit of paper. Car number 1 was bought by me for £278 and sold for £1,425. Got that? The 10-year-old boy wrote the 2 separate amounts down slowly and carefully. Car number 2, the father went on, cost me £118 and sold for £760. Got it? Yes, Dad, the son said. I've got that. Car number 3 cost £111 and sold for £999.50. Say that again, the son said. How much did it sell for? £999.50, the father said. And that, by the way, is another of my nifty little tricks to diddle the customer. Never ask for a big round figure. Always go just below it. Never say £1,000. Always say £999.50. It sounds much less, but it isn't. Clever, isn't it? Very, the son said. You're brilliant, Dad. Car number 4 cost £86. A real wreck that was, and sold for £699.50. Not too fast, the son said, writing the numbers down. Right, I've got it. Car number 5 cost £637 and sold for £1,649.50. You got all those figures written down, son? Yes, Daddy, the boy said, crouching over his pad and carefully writing. Very well, the father said. Now work out the profit I made on each of the 5 cars and add up the total. Then you'll be able to tell me how much money your rather brilliant father made altogether today. That's a lot of sums, the boy said. Of course it's a lot of sums, the father answered. But when you're in big business like I am, you've got to be hot stuff at arithmetic. I've practically got a computer inside my head. It took me less than 10 minutes to work the whole thing out. You mean you did it in your head, Dad? The son asked, goggling. Well, not exactly, the father said. Nobody could do that, but it didn't take me long. When you're finished, tell me what you think my profit was for the day. I've got the final total written down here, and I'll tell you if you're right. We're going to stop. I have a question. My question is, how does Michael feel about working out the total of his father's profits for 2 marks? That means that my answer is going to need to have a point, and it's going to need to have evidence. I'm going to share my example with you first, and then you're going to have a go. So listen while I think aloud. I think Michael feels apprehensive about working out the total of his father's profits. So he feels quite nervous, a bit hesitant to do it. He's not really sure about it because he struggles to keep up with writing the numbers his father reads to him and tells his father that there are a lot of sums, which has been quoted from the text, which means he might feel worried about calculating them all. That's what I think. So I've used my sentence stem, I've used the word because to explain why I think it, and I've also used evidence from the text. I would like you to say your answer out loud or have a discussion at home, and then make a note of your ideas on your piece of paper or in your home learning book. Remember that this answer needs a point and evidence. Press pause now to write down your answer, and then press play once you are ready. Brilliant. I can't wait to read some of your answers. Let's continue. Matilda said quietly, Dad, You made exactly £4,303 and 50p altogether. Don't butt in, the father said. Your brother and I are busy with high finance. But Dad... Shut up, the father said. Stop guessing and trying to be clever. Look at your answer, Dad, Matilda said gently. If you've done it right, it ought to be £4,303 and 50p. Is that what you've got, Dad? The father glanced down at the paper in his hand. He seemed to stiffen. He became very quiet. There was a silence. Then he said, Say that again. £4,303.50, Matilda said. There was another silence. The father's face was beginning to go dark red. I'm sure it's right, Matilda said. You little cheat, the father suddenly shouted, pointed at her with his finger. You looked at my bit of paper. You read it off from what I've got written here. Daddy, I'm the other side of the room, Matilda said. How could I possibly see it? Don't give me that rubbish, the father shouted. Of course you looked. You must have looked. No one in the world could give the right answer just like that, especially a girl. You're a little cheat, madam. That's what you are, a cheat and a liar. We're going to stop for our final question. My question is, why does Mr. Wormwood accuse Matilda of being a cheat? For 2 marks. This time, I'm not going to share my answer first. You're going to say your answer out loud and then make a note of your ideas on your piece of paper or in your home learning book. Remember, you need a point and evidence. Well done. My answer is I think Mr. Wormwood accuses Matilda of being a cheat because it took him a lot longer than Matilda to work out the profits correctly. He says no one in the world could give the right answer just like that, which means his arithmetic was not as good as Matilda's and he feels embarrassed. So I've used my sentence opener, I think, I've used because to explain why I think my main point, and then I've used evidence to back that up. At that point, the mother came in carrying a large tray on which were the 4 suppers. This time it was fish and chips, which Mrs. Wormwood had picked up in the fish and chip shop on her way home from bingo. It seemed that bingo afternoons left her so exhausted both physically and emotionally that she never had enough energy left to cook in the evening. So if it wasn't TV dinners, it had to be fish and chips. What are you looking so red in the face about, Harry? She said as she put the tray down on the coffee table. Your daughter's a cheat and a liar, the father said, taking his plate of fish and placing it on his knees. Turn the telly on and let's not have any more talk. And that is the end of our chapter. Well done. Tomorrow we will continue reading. That's not supposed to say the Hodgehog, that is supposed to say Matilda. And we will carry on making inferences. On your piece of paper or in your home learning book, I would love for you to make a prediction about what you think will happen next in our story.